Benjamin Netanyahu has decided that he hasn't murdered enough people in Gaza, so he's considering a new offensive to try to regain the upper hand in the elections, because the Israeli electorate these days wants someone as fascist as humanly possible. And so if you haven't murdered enough people in Gaza yet, you haven't done enough. And oh, by the way, are they really going to set up the Trump Riviera in Gaza? Of course, that was a joke and a lie and deep Israeli propaganda. But Sharon is here to tell us the truth about what's actually happening.
All right, so here it is. Israel will be holding elections, Cenk, in October. The polling currently indicates that Netanyahu will be replaced by former Israeli Army Chief Gadi Eisenkot. Former general is considered the architect of the Dahiyya Doctrine, an Israeli strategy of striking urban areas with overwhelming military force to deter militant groups, which was put into use during the 2006 Lebanon War. Wall Street Journal with the reporting. But according to The Guardian, there is growing apprehension that Netanyahu, facing the threat of electoral defeat, will gamble on a new all-out offensive in Gaza before that October vote. Israeli officials have repeatedly suggested that a return to war is inevitable on the grounds that Hamas has refused to disarm. And there is more bad news for Gaza. You might recall Trump's Board of Peace proposed a highly optimistic plan to restore Gaza. Here is a refresher from Democracy Now!
As President Trump formally inaugurated his so-called Board of Peace at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Thursday, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, presented his vision of turning Gaza into an upscale, futuristic seaside resort with gleaming skyscrapers and entirely new cities, an ambitious proposal that would require an investment of at least $25 billion. Kushner outlined the so-called Gaza master plan as he presented slides, one of which showed a map of the besieged territory divided into different zones. Kushner said the first phase of the project would be to rebuild the southern Gaza city of Rafah, which was leveled by Israeli attacks. The Rafah border crossing with Egypt is expected to reopen next week. Families in Gaza fear Israel and the U.S. will move to forcibly displace them to another country. This is Jared Kushner laying out his plan.
We've developed ways to redevelop Gaza. Gaza, as President Trump's been saying, has amazing potential, and this is for the people of Gaza. We've developed it into zones. In the beginning, we were toying with the idea of saying, let's build a free zone, and then we have a Hamas zone. And then we said, you know what, let's just plan for catastrophic success.
Jared Kushner. The Board of Peace is now pursuing the notably less ambitious plan of building a refugee camp in Gaza. Pilot camp is in the current blueprint stages. Would consist of portable cabins for tens of thousands of displaced people in Gaza, would be set up in the buffer zone along the ceasefire line near Rafah. Israeli troops would withdraw from the line, and security at the crossing between Hamas-run Gaza and the camp would be overseen by the ISF, and especially trained Palestinian police force officially vetted by NCAG and the ISF.
You've got to make sure you're getting your news from a range of sources that help you see the real story, not some biased version of the truth. That's why we've been relying on our partners over at Ground News. They're a small independent team who built an app and website that gathers news from across the political spectrum so you can compare coverage on any issue with data on each source's political bias, credibility, and even ownership. I found this headline through Ground News, and I think it's worth digging into. 2 January 6 police officers sued Trump to block $1.8 billion lawfare fund. Now, this is a pretty loaded headline, and when I look at it on Ground News, I can understand the story better than I can from the headline alone. Ground News shows me that over 300 sources covered this particular story, with only 12% of that coverage coming from right-leaning sources. Now, I can also see the distinct differences in how the left and the right frame this story. For example, this high factuality source on the left is calling this a $1.8 billion slush fund for the insurrectionists on January 6th, while this right-leaning mixed factuality source is calling this a lawfare victims fund. Same story, 2 completely different implications, but I wouldn't have that context without Ground News. We have a president who plays fast and loose with the facts, and too much of the media unfortunately does the same. But I think Ground News is solving that issue, and it's one we've talked about a lot lot on this channel. The overload, distraction, the missing context that's skewing our perspective of the news. So if you're tired of the chaos, we've got 40% off their Vantage plan. Just go to ground.news/TYT or scan the QR code. I really think it's worth checking out.
Though in reality, Israel is expected to have a decisive say in just who is recruited. But even that might be preferable to the alternative. Anonymous diplomat telling The Guardian that if the Board of Peace chooses to do nothing, then far-right Israelis would fill the void and move to ethnically cleanse that territory. The aim is just to keep something going, keep the ball in play, because if you stop, there are others with a more extreme agenda just waiting to jump in and take over. And they are talking about wholesale population transfer and colonization. Meanwhile, the Israeli government is refusing to listen to the Board of Peace. Ari Lightstone, Trump administration's lead negotiator in Israel, who also serves as a BOP advisor, wrote to Netanyahu, the government, privately in June, calling for a relaxation of restrictions on dual-use humanitarian aid entering Gaza, which have stopped the shipment of essential items such as water pipes, solar panels. According to an anonymous official, the Israeli government has failed to approve that request, Cenk.
Yeah. So what do we tell you? The Israelis are never going to stop. So they pretended that, oh, we have to keep bombing Gaza in random places and murdering their kids because tunnels, because hostages. Now we found tape, and we showed it to you guys the other day, that the Israeli government actually was ordering killing their own hostages. That's on tape. So as Hamas was taking them back, the Israelis were trying to kill their own hostages. It's unbelievable. But they pretended they cared so much about the hostages, and they dropped bombs in buildings that might have had the hostages in them. So they never cared. It was always a lie. I don't mean the people of Israel. The people of Israel did actually care about the hostages. The government didn't at all, Netanyahu's government. And then now their new excuse, well, if you give the hostages back, then we'll get out of Gaza. Total lie. They now have 70% of Gaza. They were lying all along. They were never going to leave. We were 100% right. Everyone supporting Israel in media was 100% wrong, but they never believed it in the first place. They were lying to you on purpose. They knew they were going to keep Gaza. And so now, what's their new excuse? Oh, Hamas didn't turn over all their arms. Now, how the hell would we know how many arms they have and if they've turned them all over? Well, it doesn't matter. It's an impossible standard on purpose, so they can go back to murdering more people in Gaza, which is what they're going to do. And now they're setting up this, the Trump Riviera has turned into a refugee camp. But there's another word for that. When you stuff 2.2 million people into 30% of Gaza, how big was Gaza Strip overall? The size of Vegas. Now we're talking about 30% of Vegas with 2.2 million people stuffed into it. All the buildings destroyed, all the hospitals and schools destroyed, people living in tents. That's a concentration camp. And then Israel is saying, you Americans have to fund our concentration camps. You owe us. You better give us more bombs to kill more of their children, and you better give us more money so we can run those concentration camps in Gaza. So that's where we are today, and most of our Congress, and we just had a vote on it, 314 to 104. People were like, it's remarkable that 104 American representatives actually voted to defund Israel. Why is that remarkable? They're one of the most monstrous governments on earth. They're in the middle of an active genocide and force us into these horrific, disgustingly immoral wars. But 314 of our deeply corrupt Israeli servants pretending to be American representatives said, no, let's give them more money. We haven't given them enough. Give them more. Now, of course, it's not their money, it's your money. You have to work harder so that they can take more out of your taxes so they can send it to Israel to run concentration camps. I mean, Sharon, in a sense, I'm both filled with nothing, like complete outrage, and I'm out of outrage. I'm exhausted from having to fight the gaslighters here in America. Nonstop lies, all in favor of the same exact country, and the same exact country that demands hundreds of billions of dollars from us, that demands endless wars from us, and nothing but disgusting liars all over media, pretending they're the good guys and the people that they're slaughtering are the bad guys.
Yeah, they're not even fancy lies because they don't have to be. I mean, they're not like intricate lies. They throw out these things that are far-fetched, farcical, con, whatever you want to call it. As the American people, hardworking people, as you mentioned, Cenk, have money being taken out of their checks at rates that nobody can afford at this point, and we're fed up. But I still wonder, when will the fed up 60 or more % of the American public overtake the corrupt public officials in America, the lack of accountability throughout the world? It's like Israel will constantly just give the world, everyone, the middle finger. Who's going to check them? Because right now, nobody's really going to check them. We can have this little 30% of Vegas and millions of people jammed in this concentration camp and nothing changes.
Yeah, because the minute that someone fights back against Israel, after Israel invades them, attacks them, burns their houses down. By the way, that's literal. There's a video out today. I put it up on my social media where the Israeli settlers have started burning down the homes of the Palestinians in the West Bank. And of course, the Israelis look by in glee because they want to destroy those Palestinians in the West Bank. They call it Judea and Samaria, and they think that God told them to murder those Palestinians and steal their land. And our media cheerleads it. So I couldn't be more disgusted by the people in mainstream media who turn out to be all terrorist supporters and genocide enablers, and disgusted by the 314 Congress people pretending to be Americans representing this evil government running concentration camps and genocides with our money.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.